Studio at whatsonyourmindradio.com. It is Wednesday. The sun is shining. Another beautiful day out there. Actually, around the region, temperature's not looking too bad, but kind of a cool day today, and that's something we're going to work on. But we're waiting to have Kevin Cramer on. Hopefully, Congressman Kevin Cramer will be joining us very soon. Our weekly word from Washington. What's going on for North Dakota in Washington with Congressman Cramer's opportunity to answer your calls. He's hung up right now for a few moments, so 701-258-0550, 1-800-228-0550. Around the region, Bismarck, Mandan, 68 this hour, Williston, 68, Dickinson, 67, Minot, 63, and Jamestown at 68, Devils Lake, 61, Grand Forks, 65, Fargo, 70 this hour, Billings, Montana at 59, kind of the cool spot, Miles City, 67, and Mobridge, 71. In Lemon, it is 67 this morning.
This hour of the program brought to you by Green Technologies. And if you're in the oil patch, you might want to just turn that radio up a notch. And let me tell you a little bit about Green Technologies. Now more than ever, water is integral to the success of oil and gas operations. Demands for increased environmental stewardship highlight the need for 100% recycling of flowback and produced waters. Many times the well site location is remote, therefore the challenges and cost of sourcing and disposing waters becomes even greater, further underscoring the need to recycle water on location. That's where Green Technologies comes in. They're the leaders in frac water recycling. They utilize a mobile filter press to provide on-site water treatment to effectively do the job, providing consistently clean recycled flowback and produce waters at great rates. Minimal footprint, lowest cost per barrel, they do it. Green Technologies. They're also, by the way, the exclusive distributor of Drill and Dry, the best all-natural absorbent, a product specially produced for the oil field application. Here's how you can get a hold of them. 855-246-4312 or visit gtmwt.com to see what Green Technologies can do for you. 855-246-4312 or gtmwt.com. They bring you this segment of What's on Your Mind. Without any further ado, we're joined by our Talk Radio Town Hall weekly participant, ready to take your questions and comments, Congressman Kevin Cramer. Hello, Kevin. How are you?
Hey, Scott. Good to be with you.
Kevin. I have a suggestion for you. A good suggestion for you today, Kevin, to start with here.
Really?
Rush Limbaugh was on yesterday talking about the oil boom. And talking about how everybody for decades has talked about, lessening our dependence on foreign oil, but unfortunately Obama and others don't do enough to actually do anything about it when we have the ability to do it, was kind of his point. But he said he couldn't remember which Dakota had the oil boom. He said, I always mix those two up. I think it's South Dakota, he said. So he needs a call from a congressman.
Oh, my goodness. First of all, I mean, a guy as smart as Rush Limbaugh, I'm surprised he doesn't know that. And second of all he has to remember is it's not where the four presidents' heads are. Not that hard. And so, Steve, can you call him for me?
I'll give him a call, Kevin. I think I will do that.
You're the guy that knows all the celebrities. I guess we still have some work to do. Remember, I give a lot of speeches on the side. Last night I was talking to a group of the American Gas Association put together a number of energy folks for me to visit with last night, and I always tell the story about how Eric Severide once referred to North Dakota as the rectangular blank spot of the nation's consciousness, but now I like to say we're the rectangular stage under the nation's spotlight, but clearly we still have some work to do.
Maybe Rush was bucking to get up on Mount Rushmore. Maybe that's why he was touting South Dakota so much.
Maybe, you never know.
Could be an angle.
Speaking of Rush, he's weighed into this debate that is waging, I guess it's more so over in the Senate, where you got a real divide between Republicans there like Cruz and Mike Lee out of Utah, Rubio out of Florida, versus like Tom Coburn and some others. We've not heard where our Senator is hoping or Heitkamp are on this issue, but it's on the Obamacare issue in the debate. And it's led Rush to suggest that Republicans are caving, are capitulating. And we asked our listeners yesterday, we said, well, where do you want your member of Congress at on this Obamacare issue? And most folks said, fight. I'm going to play you something Rush said and get your take on it, because I hear it a lot from our listeners as well, that they want you to spoil for a fight and see the conservative side sort of laying down too often. Respond to his comments on how on Obamacare and other issues, there's just too much go along to get along. Here it is.
That's not a strategy. That's capitulation. That's not even pushing back against it. Even if you don't have a chance to stop it, why not make a stand? Tell people who you are as Republicans, as conservatives. They've never had a greater chance to contrast who they are with liberal Democrats and what's happening now. And instead of doing that, the Republican establishment seems to be going along with them. Obamacare, immigration reform, amnesty, whatever it is, there's no disagreement. There's no pushback on it.
He says capitulation has become the Republican strategy. He was on with Greta Sestra last night on the Fox News channel. There's never a shortage of opinions for you, from the sidelines, from commentators like Rush and constituents do weigh in very often. I wanted to give you a chance to respond to that, Kim.
No, well, first of all, I think there's a lot of truth to it, and it sounds to me like Rush is talking about the United States Senate, and that's a very different animal than the United States House, where we have voted, 37 times. I've had the opportunity twice just in the first 6 months of my tenure in Congress to vote to repeal Obamacare. Now, that's about as hard of a pushback as you can have, is to vote to repeal it. And in fact, this week we're going to vote again. Well, let me back up a little. I think we've been very successful in some other strategies. In fact, 7 bills that have been introduced and passed by the House over the last 3 years to trim back various components of Obamacare have actually been passed by the Senate and passed into law, signed into law by the President. So there's a recognition that there's something wrong. But just was last week or the week before, we voted in the House with 35 Democrats joining us to codify the 1-year delay for the employer mandate, and then we voted with 22 Democrats voting with the Republicans to put a 1-year delay on the individual mandate. So, and that's really the heart of Obamacare, obviously, are the mandates. So what we're seeing now, Scott and Steve, is not a capitulation on the part of the Republicans, but a fraying on the part of the Democrats, where they're starting to see this liability. You've got 3 union leaders that have written to Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid saying, "God help us! This thing is a disaster. We've got to have some help." So here, what I think you're seeing is just the opposite. I don't think you're seeing capitulation on the part of the conservatives. I think you're seeing a fraying and a division on the part of the liberals. And it's one of those things where you've got to fight just the right amount of fight, lest you go over the cliff. And that's where we may be. But this week we're going to vote now on Congressman Tom Price's bill. He's a physician from Georgia, and he's got a bill that's basically prohibits the IRS from implementing any of Obamacare. So it's not a repeal, but it's an IRS bill that says you are prohibited from implementing Obamacare. And of course, as we know, the IRS on January 1st becomes the implementer of Obamacare. So we'll be bringing that up this week in the House, and I'm sure it will pass.
Your question for the Congressman Kevin Cramer, 701-258-0550, 1-800-228-0550. Should this be part of the budget battle? I want to come back to the unions not backing this now. If the union support goes away with Obamacare, does that open up the next step for it becoming part of the budget battle and really eroding the support on the Democratic side for it?
Well, let's remember that Obamacare kicks in January. The budget has to be done by September 30th. Either that or another continuing resolution, and I don't know exactly what's going to happen in all of that.
We're defunded?
Well, the problem with that idea, it's a great idea, by the way, but Obamacare is like Social Security and Medicare and food stamps. It's what's called mandatory spending. So let's, for example, if we were to say we won't pass a continuing resolution or budget unless we defund Obamacare, we can do that, but I think what would happen is that the president would let us go over the cliff, the government would shut down, and we know that doesn't play well for conservatives or Republicans, and Obamacare continues to be funded because it's automatic spending. So that therein is, I think, the biggest problem with that strategy. I'd rather see us, piece by piece, continue to dismantle it while it crumbles under its own weight. I think it's a better strategy. I think it's more responsible. I think it's more likely to be successful. That's probably the biggest issue.
What's amazing, though, and I don't know if it's just an overall distaste for Obamacare, it seems like even though when you present that hey, it won't work. In other words, you could make it part of the budget battle, but it'll still go on, it'll still be funded. People don't care. They just want to fight. Sue says, I'm sick and tired of Republicans with absolutely no sense of fight for what is right. I mean, people just want a fight.
Well, that's all well and good, but we also need to govern. And what I would, again, let me say it, we have voted in the House of Representatives successfully, by the way, we have passed 37 repeals of Obamacare. So to suggest that somehow there's not a fight going on would be to sort of not be paying attention, it would seem to me. So I'd love to fight. If we could vote to repeal, we could put a vote to repeal Obamacare. If we put an amendment on every bill, we'd probably pass every bill. Probably Congress enough repeal on the farm bill, we'd probably have a farm bill.
Congressman, we're up against the break. 701-258-0550, 1-800-228-0550. Your call's next for Congressman Kevin Cramer. It's What's on Your Mind. We want to know what's on your mind. So call and tell us at 800-228-0550 or 701-258-0550. Now a word about agriculture. From the North Dakota Farm Bureau. Did you know agriculture's direct contribution to North Dakota's economy every year is about $6 billion? Ag represents close to a quarter of our state's economic base, employs approximately 25% of the state's workforce. Agriculture is North Dakota's economic engine, and the North Dakota Farm Bureau is agriculture's best advocate. Farm Bureau understands how a strong ag sector helps keep our state strong. But we're about more than agriculture. We're about those things that are important to all North Dakotans. A strong, growing, vibrant economy, good schools, safe communities, and keeping more of our hard-earned money in our own pockets. Farm Bureau members know the organization is not only working for them on important issues in Bismarck and Washington, D.C., but helping them save a few bucks on everything from new and used vehicles to prescription drugs. Find out more about the organization by going online at ndfb.org. That's the North Dakota Farm Bureau website, ndfb.org. Your state, your future, your farmer, that's agriculture. And that's the North Dakota Farm Bureau. KeepItLocal.com, the Northland's most respected auto shopping website for over 10 years. Whether you're looking to buy or sell a car, truck, SUV, or boat, KeepItLocal.com keeps it simple. With hundreds of dealers and private sellers, our inventory changes daily. We are the source for finding your next auto or power sport item. Remember, KeepItLocal.com. We keep it simple.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
Hi, Kevin.
At Clear Channel Media and Entertainment, we are growing, and I'm happy to tell you about a newly created position available now at our 6 radio station cluster here in Bismarck, Mandan. Our new job opportunity is for a full-time sales, traffic, and production coordinator. Send your resume to me, Neil Carey, at Clear Channel Media and Entertainment, P.O. Box 2156, Bismarck, North Dakota 58502. We are an equal opportunity employer. Again, that address is 2156 Bismarck, North Dakota.
Violent protests across the country. The hurricane battering the coast. The armed escapees. Wherever the news is happening, iHeartRadio has unique local coverage. iHeartRadio brings you 1,500 live stations nationwide. So stay informed and have peace of mind knowing your family is safe no matter where you are. Wherever the news is happening, iHeartRadio has unique local coverage. On your smartphone or tablet. Download the free app at iHeartRadio.com.
I'm Scott Hennen, and Congressman Cramer ready to take your calls. We'll start with Gary in Williston at 800-228-0550. Gary, go ahead.
Hey, Congressman Cramer, one thing I kind of have to disagree with you on. You said Obamacare is just like Social Security and Medicare. It has to be funded. It's a mandate. It does not. Every year, there's hundreds of millions of dollars of discretionary funding that has to be approved by Congress every single year to implement Obamacare, to keep Obamacare going on there. So that's why I keep saying I get tired of the Republicans saying all the time, well, we cannot defund it because it's mandatory spending. And it is not mandatory spending. There's hundreds of millions of dollars every single year. And coming up in in September, there are some members of Congress and in the Senate that want to fight the discretionary spending. They do not want to fund it. And the Republicans have a right to do that in doing it. But and everybody knows the majority of American people do not want Obamacare. I don't understand why the Republicans, what they think they have to lose, to stand up and say, no, the American people don't want it, we're not funding it. Could you answer that question for me?
Sure. First of all, Gary, there's about 1% of Obamacare that, some of the agency money and whatnot that is discretionary. But 99% of it is non-discretionary, automatic, mandatory spending that will go on regardless of what we do, unless we get a long-term budget deal done that deals with entitlements. And therein lies the real big bargain that we have to get after, not only to get rid of Obamacare, but to get this budget under control. Now, on the discretionary side, I would remind people that they ought to be heartened by the fact that last year our deficit was $1.3 trillion. But in 2014, at the rate we're going to be at probably $650 billion, about half or less of the deficit. We will have cut that in half, all on the discretionary side. And by 2015, it's estimated we'll be at about $350 billion in deficit. So we will be cutting the deficit by about $1 trillion in the next, in the last year, in the next year or two. But the discretionary side of the budget, of course, is less than 1/3 of the entire budget, and most of Obamacare, like 99% of it, is mandatory spending. So that's why, while we can hold it hostage to do some, hold some other things hostage to try to deal with Obamacare, I believe we'd be playing right into the Democrats' hands, because I think they'd let the government shut down, close the national parks, make us out to be bad guys, while Obamacare gets funded by deficit into forever. So we have the opportunity now with the windows open to deal with these things piece by piece, while always highlighting the fact. And people are seeing the fact. Gary sees the fact. Every small business sees the fact. Individuals are going to see it when they start getting the bill, getting the fines and the penalties and whatnot. In the meantime, we have to be offering up alternatives, which we are and have been doing for a long time in the House, including this week when we basically defund or authorize the IRS against doing anything with Obamacare, implementing it, which has the same impact, really, Gary, as defunding it. If we say to the IRS, you cannot implement Obamacare, it has the same impact, and more likely to get some Democrat votes. But Gary's point, really, his frustration, and everybody's that I hear, is really the Senate, not the House, and I understand that, because you have some Senate Republicans saying we need to, draw a line in the sand. You have some Senate Republicans that say not doing that. Therein lies probably the bigger problem, the lack of discipline over there.
Gary, thanks for the phone call. 701-258-0550, 1-800-228-0550. Your calls for Congressman Kevin Cramer. Myron in Washburn, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, you still there?
Go ahead, Myron.
Yeah, I've got diabetes. I've had it now for almost 60 years. And now this Obamacare junk, I can't go down to the local drugstore anymore and buy my test strips to test my glucose levels and stuff.
Yes.
And I had them ordered now for over a week from someplace in Tennessee, the Diabetic Care or whatever it's called.
Yes.
And I still have not received them.
Okay. Well, two things, Myron. One is I'd love to get some information and deal with if you have a particular case we need to follow up on. Let me, we'd be happy to try and do that and see if we can't break the logjam. But a bigger issue is a policy problem with Obamacare that gets exactly to the heart of your situation, and there are many, many others like it. And it has to do with the competitive bidding process versus not I guess you call it non-competitive, but the ability for local pharmacies and providers and healthcare equipment providers and whatnot to be able to service your needs, to be able to not only for you to go to the drugstore and buy them, but even to deliver them to your house. They're not even allowed to do that under these crazy restrictions that we have. So, Gary or Myron, if you have a need that we can make an inquiry into, I'd love to help do that. On the other hand, I understand your policy situation very well, and I actually am a co-sponsor of a bill. It's called HR 1717,
that will be taken up, I think, in September or October, that deals directly and specifically with the situation that you've addressed. Because it does work, especially in rural America.
Yeah, well, 7 days now. I have not been able to test my sugar.
Oh my gosh.
I have no idea where it's at.
Myron, I hope somebody's listening. I don't know if my staff is listening, but hopefully somebody's listening. And Myron, if we could get your contact information, or you'd call my office, Scott, or
we'll do.
get together.
Myron, hang on a sec. Aaron will take your information off the air and we'll pass it on to Kevin's staff, okay? Appreciate the call. John Minot, you're next on What's on Your Mind for Congressman Kevin Cramer. Or John and Bismarck, we're going to? Okay, John Bismarck, then John Minot. Go ahead, John.
Yes, this is John Bismarck.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Cramer, I'm not attacking you. I think you're fantastic, and I give all the credit in the world for coming on this show. Mr. Hoven and Ms. Heitkamp, and you heard me say it's for their cowards. They don't come and talk to us. They don't take the heat and the praise. So I appreciate you 100%. But I do too think you're wrong. The 36 times that you guys voted to appeal Obamacare, that was nothing. Shouldn't waste the time. My civics class said the House spends the money. My social studies class told me, history told me that. And they might not teach it anymore. And I don't care if it's $1, but 1% of what, $500 million is a lot of money. So every time that we can take out of the program to tear it down, we should be doing. And we should be fight like all these people want. The public is on the Republican side on this. The same thing with the immigration bill. Speaker Boehner is not bringing the immigration bill up for the whole summer because he just wants it to be lying low in the weeds until the recess gets over, so there isn't town hall meetings and there isn't an outcry like happened in 2010 and what happened in 2004.
John, I'm going to interject here so we get Kevin answers before the break, okay? Kevin, your response?
Sure. Well, first of all, John's right about even 1% is enough, and that's why we're doing things like this week, prohibiting the IRS. You probably also noticed in the appropriations process they're looking at cutting the IRS by 30%. Well, that will basically defund Obamacare's implementation. So these fights are happening. I just think they're happening in a strategic, smart way that actually have a potential of being successful rather than just sort of the House standing alone again. We want to be able to send stuff over. We're going to vote today on the Student Loan Act, which was the House bill that the Democrats and the Senate finally took up and passed with just very minor changes.
Hang on, if you went more after the break, don't go away. Frac water recycling by Green Technologies. Now more than ever, water is integral to the success of oil and gas operations. Demands for increased environmental stewardship highlight the need for 100% recycling of flowback and produced waters. Green Technologies does it. If the well site location is remote, the challenges and costs of sourcing and disposing of waters becomes even greater, further underscoring the need to recycle water on location. Green Technologies does it. They're the leaders in frac water recycling, using a mobile filter press to provide on-site water treatment to effectively do the job better than anyone. Green Technologies, providing consistently clean, recycled flowback and produced waters. They're also the exclusive distributor of Drill and Dry, the best all-natural absorbent product specially produced for the oil field applications. Call them today for more at 855-246-4312, 855-246-4312, or go online at Greentechnologies at gtmwt.com.
Bismarck and Bandit. By overwhelming demand, a second show has been added for this Friday night. Now, two big nights. And your advance ticket will be honored at either show. It's Bad Boy Monster Truck, a liquid stunt show with car crashes that'll blow you away. A Jetfire show and Destruction Derby Madness with Tough Truck. And on Saturday night, we do it all over again. And those wild trailer races. And cars will be flying in the air. All advance tickets get a free mid-party pass to meet the driver at Old Bismarck and Bandit Civics location. But don't worry, when those are gone, thousands of tickets go on sale right at the Dakota Speedway ticket office at 5 p.m. on Friday and 12 noon on Saturday. It's Friday and Saturday night. Gates open at 5, show starts at 7:30. And this is the biggest monster truck night of thrills Dakota Speedway has ever seen. Rain or shine, Dakota Speedway will rock.
Brought to you by Bedsider and the Ad Council. Bedsider.org.
Fire. So what's on your mind? 701-258-0550, 1-800-228-0550, our weekly chat with Congressman Kevin Cramer. And Kevin, we're up against the break, but did you want to finish your comments on John's comments?
I'm just trying to think what John's other comments were. He was...
John, any other answer we didn't get you? John's still there.
Oh, yeah, the immigration. But I want to make one point. On the immigration, I understand why he's suspicious of the process, because that's what a lot of us are suspicious of. We're suspicious of no matter how good an immigration bill the House passes, when it gets to conference committee, that it'll get watered down. If there's one issue that I know the House is not going to relent on, it's immigration reform. If it comes back with amnesty or weak border protection, the House won't vote for the bill. So that's why we're taking the bill up in sections. And the first section would be taken up is border security that would be verified not by the White House, not by the administration, but rather by the GAO. A third party would verify that the goals are met in securing the border before the next phases of immigration reform would kick in. And then, of course, the amnesty will not be part of it in the House, not any way, shape, or form.
By the way, I saw a appalling comment by Senator John McCain yesterday on this, saying basically, stuff we don't like we can get rid of in the conference committee, specifically referencing the 20,000 Border Patrol agents, which was, one of the arguments in favor of the passing the thing, to say, well, we're going to, more technology, more. He just sort of flippantly said, we'll get rid of that
that comment sent shivers on the spine of just about every Republican in the House of Representatives, and makes it much more difficult to get anything done in here, because that's the very thing that they fear, is that the establishment, made up of people like John McCain, would water down the efforts of the House to protect American citizens and American jobs. And so it was a chilling statement coming from somebody who should know better.
Kevin, you mentioned the oversight. Who chooses the oversight?
Well, in our bill, we don't have a bill yet, but in the bill that the House Judiciary Committee is taking up, it's probably be the GAO, the Government Accounting Office. And so it's third party. It's not the administration. It's not an agency within the executive branch or even Congress. It's a neutral third party that would verify that the goals of border security would be met before other things would kick in. Because that's been the problem. Ronald Reagan had border security too in 1986, but they never implemented it, and we haven't been implementing it since. George Bush was very weak on choosing what things to, what laws to enforce, and this president not only does he not enforce them, he announces he's not going to enforce them.
John, did we get to all your questions?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I just wanted one thing. He said that he's not, he's there to legislate. I don't agree with that. He's there to do what we, the constituents, want. And that means even if we're the only state in the union or the only constituents that don't want something, and every other congressman, every other senator or president wants it, he's there to do what we want, no matter what it is. And you're not going to get to legislate with Obama and the Democrats. There's no compromise. He said he drew a line in the sand, Obama. You talk about lines in the sand. Drew a line in the sand saying that if a bill came up without amnesty, he would not sign it. So that's why we want to fight. We want our lines in the sand. And then maybe there can be compromise. We keep giving in on everything.
Yeah, I don't see why we would ever give in on amnesty. I mean, that's just not going to be I don't mind a path for somebody after they've paid their debt to society, but there's a conviction that has to take place if somebody has broken the law, regardless of what that law is. There has to be some conviction of that law, and then whatever we do after that, but whether it's a deferred sentence or whatever, there's got to be some acknowledgement of a broken law, and then and a price to pay for that broken law before you'd even be considered, anything legal, much less citizenship. And I think, frankly, citizenship ought to be taken off the table.
John in Minot, you're next for Congressman Kevin Cramer. Thanks for waiting.
You say you're going to vote on a bill this week that isn't going to allow the IRS to do anything with Obamacare, and you're going to defund it. What's going to happen after that?
But the that bill gets some Democrat votes. If we can get some Democrat votes on that bill, we'll send it over to the Senate for their consideration. Whether they take it up or not, I don't know. But what we're starting to see happen, and this is part of this strategy, because we're getting Democrat votes on some of these bills, we're starting to get the momentum on our side, even in the legislative body. We already have it with the American public. We know that. But when we have 35 votes and then 22 votes, Democrat votes on issues that pare back Obamacare, we can get that kind of momentum going. Maybe we can get to 51 senators. And then you put the screws to the president. Then he has a bill that he has to consider either signing or vetoing, and then he has to weigh, the public sentiment for once.
Appreciate the call, John. Thank you very much. Bob in Minot. Question on the immigration debate. Go ahead, Bob. You're up.
Thanks so much, Scott. Steve, it's nice to talk to you. I think the only solution for this immigration problem, we hear words like amnesty, and it's not amnesty, and it is amnesty, but it's not amnesty. 4 syllables, gentlemen. Deportation. These people have broken the law. Tradesmen all over this country have been gouged and no longer have the ability to feed their families because this invasion is taking over the entire construction industry. Now, what's it going to take when the Mexicans are just waltzing into Congress and running things, and you congressmen, you don't have the ability to make a living anymore? Are you going to be talking amnesty then? This thing is out of control. And here's another thing. Here's something else to keep in mind. Not everyone that comes across this border is coming across with good ideas. You've got MS-13 distributing drugs all over this country. We've all heard the stories of marijuana groves in Yosemite Park. We need to take control of this border. And if Barack Obama wants to draw a line in the sand, let him draw a line in the sand at the Rio Grande. That's how I feel about it. Let's just enforce the law or repeal the law.
Well, therein lies the biggest issue right there is the selective enforcement, because what we have today is amnesty by virtue of executive inaction. And so that's why in the House discussions and House bills, what we will put is we'll put teeth on the border laws, because what's missing isn't the law. It's already the law. What's missing is an enforcement of the law, and that's why having a third party, not enforce it, but verification, forces that issue, hopefully. The other thing I would say, with regard to tradesmen and whatnot, we do still have a high unemployment problem in this country, not in North Dakota, obviously, but in this country. But we also have a lot of job openings that a lot of Americans either won't take or can't take. For example, Microsoft has 6,000 openings right now that cannot be filled by American citizens. So we need to find a way for our economy to grow here rather than grow in some other country by having a reasonable, streamlined, legal immigration process that acknowledges the opportunities in our economy. We have a number of farm worker openings in places like, not so much again in North Dakota, although we have some seasonal openings. We've had some problems with getting enough immigration in work visas for some of our more technical work. But in places like the Pacific Northwest, where there are thousands of openings because of loss of legal immigration, not illegal, but legal immigration. At the same time as we have this high unemployment rate in many parts of our country, it just doesn't make sense that we have, with immigration reform, we also have to have welfare reform. We have to have a system that doesn't have the perverse incentive of people not working. We are upside down in so many respects in this country where we've created an incentive for people to not work rather than an incentive to work, and then we create opportunities. But the other thing I'd say about what Bob's point on immigration is, and I know we've talked about this before, this is also why we have to get to in many cases, the heart of the matter, and that is the demand, which are the employers. Why do employers get to employ illegal immigrants, basically protect them while they protect their low-cost labor, and not suffer the consequences? So deportation is one thing. The other thing is there needs to be some penalty for those who would knowingly hire and harbor illegal workers.
Bob, thanks for the phone call. Kevin, I wanted to ask you about the Keystone Pipeline, Obama's latest comments. You mentioned administration inactivity, basically opening up the border. we look at that with the energy policy as well. His latest comments on the Keystone, basically poo-pooing the jobs that are out there, and these are shovel-ready jobs.
Not only that, but here in the same speech, he said we need to have more money, spend more money on stimulus to build the infrastructure in this country. Well,
that's infrastructure.
This is infrastructure. And if building a pipeline isn't a real job, then he must be saying building a road isn't a real job, or building a bridge isn't a real job. That's his attitude. It's so, well, it's either naive or worse. Those are real jobs. There's thousands of real jobs, not estimated by the company, by TransCanada or the industry, but estimated by his own administration. And so one real job leads to several other real jobs, Mr. President. And yeah, get out of the way and build the pipeline for lots of reasons, not the least of which is energy security and job security for our country. And then let's get out of the way of lots of other things like drilling. We're taking up a bill today in the Natural Resources Committee that we're going to be voting out, introduced by my friend Bill Flores from Texas, that it's called the States' Rights Bill. And basically what it says is that if you have a state that does fracking and you have state rules, we need to defer to those state rules. It's basically the Department of the Interior, we're saying, can't enforce any federal regulation or anything else regarding hydraulic fracturing or any component of the process if the state has regulations, guidance, or permit requirements for that activity. So we can save money for the bureaucracy and create jobs in the private sector without spending any tax dollars.
Some folks have taken his comments about the environmental suggestions that he had for the Canadians on the offsets on greenhouse gases and all that as, maybe telegraphing something that he's looking for from the Canadians. Did you read into any of that?
Sure. I think he's trying to be the king of Canada as well. He wants to be the king of North America. And sure, he wants some concessions, but I hope they don't give him too many because let's not forget, the Canadians have lots of alternatives. They can put that stuff on rail cars, ship it all over the North American continent without Barack Obama's permission. They can put it on ships, send it to China without his permission, where they don't have the same environmental regulations that we have. They can put them on ships and send it to Southern California, and we can use it right here in the United States. So the idea that somehow he gets to dictate the terms to a foreign government, it just is a further demonstration of his arrogance.
What's in your mind? 701-258-0550, 1-800-228-0550. Your comments for Congressman Kevin Cramer when we come back from the break. Also, Congressman, I wanted to ask you about the Department of Justice investigation, a probe, an antitrust probe into some fracking consortiums. We'll talk about that coming up next.
Every day, what's on your mind? 800-228-0550.
Bakken Bruce. He's the guy you want to call if you have a problem in the Bakken. We're talking about Bruce Acre and Legacy Steel Buildings. They're the industry leader in providing superior quality service and durability at great prices. And I've heard the story over and over and over again. Scott, thanks for the tip. Glad you sent us to Bruce. Can't believe the deal we're getting. Oh, incredible. We'll never build another building with anybody ever again. That's what they tell me. And you know what? Even if you never end up buying a thing from Bruce and the team at Legacy Steel Buildings, it'll be worth the time to learn a little bit about solving problems in the Bakken. That's why I call him Bakken Bruce, because I tell you, he can solve problems. Bruce and his brother Wayne Acre have Legacy Steel Buildings. It's a great, great story. They've been building buildings for generations all throughout the upper Midwest. Call this number, 800-237-9620. 800-237-9620. Ask for Bakken Bruce at Legacy Steel Buildings.
KeepItLocal.com, the Northland's most respected auto shopping website for over 10 years. Whether you're looking to buy or sell a car, truck, SUV, or boat, KeepItLocal.com keeps it simple. With hundreds of dealers and private sellers, our inventory changes daily. We are the source for finding your next auto or power sport item. Remember, KeepItLocal.com. We keep it simple.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
Travel with other KFYR listeners on a Hawaiian vacation designed for farmers, departing next January 24th. See all the highlights of the 4 main islands with escorted sightseeing included on each of them, including farm sightseeing. Visit the Arizona Memorial in Pearl Harbor, part of your Honolulu City Tour. Take the Wailua Riverboat cruise to the Fern Grotto on Kauai. Enjoy a tour of Maui, including the old whaling capital of Lahaina, and tour a pineapple plantation. Then on the Big Island, Volcanoes National Park, and Orchid Nursery, a macadamia nut factory, a Kona coffee plantation, and more. For reservations and details, call YMT Vacations at 1-800-736-7300. Prices including airfare from Bismarck start at only $2,919 plus tax. Space is limited, so call today. 1-800-736-7300. That's 1-800-736-7300.
Violent protests across the country. The hurricane battering the coast. The inescapable. Wherever the news is happening, iHeartRadio has unique local coverage. iHeartRadio brings you 1,500 live stations nationwide. So stay informed and have peace of mind knowing your family is safe no matter where you are. Wherever the news is happening, iHeartRadio has unique local coverage. On your smartphone or tablet. Download the free app at iHeartRadio.com.
Here you are, Polly. My latest culinary creation. These fish fillets look wonderful. They are. I just used a small amount of a vegetable oil that's low in saturated fat. Does that matter? It does. Oils like canola, corn, and olive mainly contain monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, and they can help reduce bad cholesterol in your blood and lower your risk of heart disease and stroke. How do you know? The American Heart Association told me at heart.org/face-the-fat.
Canola Info proudly supports the American Heart Association's Face the Fats campaign. Cramer in our talk radio town hall, 800-228-0550-701-258-0550 studio at whatsonyourmindradio.com. Okay, so you had a question on the DOJ, and I have another one from a listener here as well.
Yeah, Congressman, U.S. Department of Justice on antitrust probe. They're taking a look at Halliburton and Baker Hughes. The antitrust division is investigating the possibility of anti-competitive practices involving pressure pumping, which is fracking performed on oil and gas wells. Are you privy to any of that? Is this an administration effort to curtail fracking? I don't see them looking into any foreign companies on this.
Forgive me for being suspicious, Steve, but this is the same Justice Department that tried to prosecute a few North Dakota oil producers for over a couple dozen dead ducks before a federal judge had to throw it out of court and embarrass them. And they should have been embarrassed for such a frivolous attempt. Now this Justice Department is what they've engaged in is what's called a civil investigative demand, where they just request a bunch of information from some of the fracking companies on the idea that somehow there's an antitrust violation, which goes completely against everything that's happening in reality. The reality is that there are more fracking companies today than there were 5 years ago, largely because of the demand. And the price of a frack job has actually gone down, not up, as a result of increasing competition. index to anybody that produces hydrocarbon in this country, and it's shameful and it's embarrassing, and we need it. What we need, you guys, is we need to fight all this, and we will and continue to in the House. We have legislation directly aimed at it, but we also need to fight smart so that we can get a Republican-controlled Senate and a Republican president, and turn back some of this zealous overreach of this administration.
Is that what this is? Do you believe there's this DOJ thing and the antitrust thing on fracking, based on some legitimate complaint, or do you think it's just another way to get at it?
No, it's just it's a trolling. They're trolling for a problem, and it creates the uncertainty. Even if they never find anything, the fact that they've initiated this creates investment problems and uncertainty. But remember, I just had EPO officials in front of me in the Science Committee a week or so ago on the fracking investigation. They're still investigating since the Pavilion snafu over in Wyoming that proved that they were completely wrong, but they continue to investigate it willy-nilly, no data. We're going to vote this week in the Science Committee to subpoena the EPA's records on all of these investigations. We have asked them dozens of times for information, for scientific data that demonstrates why they're doing what they're doing, that demonstrates the conclusions that they're drawing on fracking, on coal, all kinds of regulations, but they've never provided them to us, and so we're getting tired of it. The only way we can get it is to subpoena. So tomorrow, actually, in the Science Committee, we're going to bring up a motion to subpoena the EPA. First time in 20-some years that the EPA has been subpoenaed by the Science Committee in Congress, but we're going to do it tomorrow because we've got to get to the bottom of this, because there seems to be no scientific data to back up this administration's war on fossil fuels.
Let's get another call in here for Congressman Cramer. Bob in West Hope, you're next on What's on Your Mind. Go ahead, Bob.
Hi.
Hi, Bob.
Am I ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I've got a situation here that I've heard on the national news that the United States was number one, something about whatever it was, in the last 7 years ago or something like this. Now they're dropped to 14. Now, what is that? You heard anything about that?
What it might be, and I don't know, but I know that we were number one 7 or 8 years ago in manufacturing, and a year or so ago we were down to like number 6 or 7. And perhaps we've slipped to number 14, but we have not, and I don't know for sure, Bob, if it is manufacturing, but we have dropped dramatically in manufacturing, and that's largely to do with regulations, quite frankly, and the cost of certain things. Well, right now we have the lowest energy costs in the world, and we have an opportunity for a manufacturing renaissance that could be led by the energy industry. But once again, the zealous overreach of the regulators in this administration are making it much more difficult to get back to number one. And I'd love to be number one in manufacturing again. That ought to be our goal, and we can do that not by doing more things, but by doing fewer things and rolling back some of this regulatory overreach.